All right, we are live. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Jesse Hughes Show. My apologies, I have been a little bit absent from the podcasting scene over the last couple of weeks, and that is due to the fact of primarily final exams. It was final exam season. I had a lot going on, things were very busy, lots of studying, lots of doing all of that. You guys know how it is. And so we took a little break, and then we're gonna, I think we'll be back next week. That has yet to be determined. I am making a move. I have a job internship lined up in Nashville that I start next week. I'm moving this weekend. So I will be in the Nashville area until August. So if you are a Nashville patriot, hit me up, let me know. We can get lunch, get coffee, get something together, hang out together. We'll see how it is. We don't have chair wine tonight. Instead, we have um, blackberry Dr. Pepper with a little something else mixed in. A sip to victory. So we have got a lot to discuss tonight. There's a lot going on, but I think the thing that has taken up the most bandwidth out of all of the possible things going on recently is the fact that one Kentucky congressman, a man named Thomas Massie, lost his primary. And there has been a lot of people giving a lot of opinions on this topic. We're going to get into the truth behind why Thomas Massie lost his primary and whether or not the claims that it was because of Israel. Israel did this. Did Israel do this? We're going to get into that as well. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that right before I came on, I saw that the U.S. is planning an operation in Cuba very soon. Now, I'm not someone that's very in favor of foreign interventions, but I'm in favor of this one. We're going to get into that as well. Before we get into any of that, I just want to remind you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit subscribe, drop a comment down below, tell me where you're watching from. If you're watching on X, as many of you do, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit repost, make sure you follow, drop a comment down below, tell me where you're watching from. Everybody do all the things. We love you guys so much. I always say we. It's like an instinctual thing. It's an instinctual thing. I always say we. I don't know why. It's just me. I'm the only person doing this right now. I don't have a producer. I don't have anything like that. It's literally just me singing in my bedroom. But I always say we for some. It's instinctual. I don't get it. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get into this. So Thomas Massie, he's been in Congress for over a decade. I think about 14 years. He's been in for several terms. Lost his primary election last night to a gentleman named Ed Gowrain. And a lot of people have been very tuned into this race because it's kind of been seen as a referendum on Trump by Republican voters. Massie has been someone very recently who has been a more of an anti-Trump voice in the Republican Party. He's been an anti-Trump voice in the Republican caucus, in the House of Representatives, standing against some of Trump's big accomplishments, accusing Trump of all sorts of stuff that we'll talk about in just a moment. And so this was seen as a referendum. Is Trump still popular? Is he still king of the party? Does he still have control? And the answer is yes. The Republican voters still love Trump. They still listen to Trump. And when they see someone that they perceive as going against Trump, they vote against that person. That is probably the biggest lesson we can learn from last night. Trump is still in control of this party. He still has the final say on a lot of people's careers. And I'm sure a lot of Republican politicians were watching this closely, wondering how this was going to go. And we really had two shots to the establishment last night. And the reason I say that is Thomas Massie, I'm not going to lie to you guys, he's not an establishment guy. He's not. But a lot of establishment members, people who are just going along to get along, people who don't like Trump very much, were watching this closely. Because if they saw Massie pull out a victory, it would give them permission to take more stands against Trump. But instead, you saw two things that really scared the establishment. You saw Massie lose, And you saw Trump endorse Ken Paxton in Texas. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But we're going to focus on Massie losing right now. Now, there have been a lot of consternation about Israel and about their role in this. And here's the thing that I want to discuss with that. I firmly believe that spending in politics by foreign countries or by organizations that advocate for foreign countries is out of control. I am not a fan of AIPAC. I'm not really a fan of Israel. I'm kind of apathetic on the country. I think AIPAC should at least be forced to register as a foreign lobby. At most, foreign spending, foreign advocacy in American politics should be straight up banned. And a lot of people who are probably Massie supporters will hear that and say, then why didn't you support Massie? Well, here's the thing. First off, I think a lot of people give a lot of credit to AIPAC that they don't actually deserve. In the 80s and the 90s, when dispensationalism was at its high, when evangelicals thought Israel was a prophetic thing that was going to usher in the second coming of Christ, AIPAC had a lot more power. The Israel lobby had a lot more power, and they still do. But that power has decreased a lot, especially among younger generations. You look at guys like Brandon Gill, you look at guys like Riley Moore, you even look at somebody who's been in Congress for decades like Paul Gosar. Paul Gosar has been accused of anti Semitism. Riley Moore and Brandon Gill, from what I've seen, don't really talk about Israel at all. And they will make vague kind of gestures towards the idea that foreign lobbying should be banned. And these are all guys who are very fierce Trump supporters. So why has Trump not gone after them if they're not, if Trump is some slave to Israel, as so many online will have you believe, why has Trump not gone after these guys? If Trump is taking his orders from AIPAC, then why has Trump not gone after these guys? It's because, from what I can see, AIPAC doesn't have as much power as people like to put on it. Now, Israel is still an important issue among older generations. It's still an important thing among the boomers, among many evangelicals. And, that's something I'm not a big fan of. I don't really care that much about the issue. But when it comes to the power the Israel lobby actually has, I think a lot of people will put blame on the Israel lobby because they don't want to accept the fact that they have agency over their own decisions. It is true, and Charlie Kirk, of all people, has talked about this. It is true that a lot of Jewish donors support causes that you and I disagree with. Open borders, transgenderism, you name it. There have been Jewish donors who have been behind that. But people like to place the blame on the Jews for everything. Literally everything. The Jews are the reason that X is happening. The Jews are the reason that Y is happening. The Jews are the reason that I don't have a girlfriend. It's a pretty bad thing. And again, there is a little bit of truth to that, but when you really look at the whole of the situation, a lot of the reasons for what's going on in America isn't simply because a few people who happen to be Jewish gave money to a cause. A lot of it has to do with the fact that there's a lot of apathy among many people in the country. People don't want to take agency for their decisions. People don't want to make decisions for the most part. They don't really care what happens. They don't pay attention to what's going on locally, which impacts more than the federal level. They pay a little bit of attention to federal politics, but it's more of a spectator sport to many of these people. They don't actually care what happens. They're not actually paying attention to what's going on. And so it's easy for a lot of people to see something like the war in Iran happen, or bad things happening domestically with prices rising, or with the rise of transgender ideology and the gay marriage and this and that. And they'll place blame on a scapegoat. And the scapegoat recently has been the Jews, or Israel, or the Israel lobby. When in reality, the reason a lot of this happened is because people stopped paying attention. It's because people stopped getting involved. Your boomer grandma who thinks that Israel is going to usher in the second coming of Christ, she might have in my opinion, wrong theology on that question, but she's also been consistently paying attention to what's happening in the country. She's voted in every election that she can remember, and she's supported causes that align with conservative values. She's supported the traditional family model. She stood against gay marriage. She stood against this transgender insanity and supported banning like gender transitions for minors and things like that. Your boomer grandma, who is wrong about Israel, is right about nearly everything else. Whereas now it seems that a lot of people who supposedly get the Israel question right are wrong about everything else. They think that we can ally with the left. We can't. They want to kill us. They think that equality is fine. Yo, dude, just let the gays get married, dude. It's fine. Is it really? Is it really? And this isn't everybody. I know a lot of very socially conservative people who do pay attention, who hold alternative viewpoints on Israel. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this show, I'm not a huge fan of them. I just see them as another country. They're not anything special. When it's within our interest to work with them, which historically there have been instances where that was the case, but more often than not, it's not been. But when it's within our interest to work with them, sure, let's work with them. When it's not within our interest to work with them, fine. We don't have to. But people place the blame on Israel for everything. And people place the blame on Israel for Massie losing last night because AIPAC did spend a lot of money on this race. However, I think that misses a few key issues. The reason Thomas Massie lost was not because of Israel. It's because he had a history of bucking the party at times where he needed to play ball that goes back several years. Let's look at 2023. In 2023, Thomas Massie supported Kevin McCarthy for House Speaker. When the entirety of the Freedom Caucus was against Kevin McCarthy, Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene were out there shilling for McCarthy, saying that he needed to be the next speaker. A few months later, Thomas Massie just happens to be on the Rules Committee. Okay, cool. We have a principled conservative who stands against big spending. Of course, sure, let's put him on the Rules Committee. He'll do some great work there, right? Well, we thought that until the Fiscal Responsibility Act came into play. And if you don't remember the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it was a big deal at the time. It was a bill to raise the debt ceiling, effectively adding trillions of dollars to the national debt. It was a compromise legislation between Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy. Biden got some of what he wanted, McCarthy got some of what he wanted. Boom. And you would think that someone like Thomas Massie would be against that, right? You would think that. However, what actually happened was that as a member of the Rules Committee, Thomas Massie cast the deciding vote to allow the Fiscal Responsibility Act to go forward to the House floor. Knowing, as anyone with more than two brain cells knew, that if something like this got to the House floor, it would get large support from both parties and would pass. And pass it did. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, and Joe Biden signed it. Massie had the chance to kill it, and he didn't. Okay, but Massie is standing against foreign wars. Okay, he's done that forever. I don't particularly like what's going on in Iran either, but I think that Massie is using that more as an excuse to take digs at the party than he is anything else. And the reason I think that is because he's doing the same thing with the Epstein files. Oh no, the Epstein files. The Trump administration refused to release them until principled conservative Thomas Massie forced them. Listen, I don't like how Pam Bondi handled it either. I think that they should have been released. I called for their release several years ago. I was promoting the Epstein didn't kill himself theory in like 2019 and 2020. I was telling my family members about this theory that Epstein didn't kill himself. I remember it was right after I graduated high school. It was in the middle of COVID. We technically weren't supposed to gather. You guys know how that was. But I was sitting outside the pool talking to my aunt and my mom. And two of the things we talked about were, I don't know if you guys remember this, but the whole Wayfair scandal. Do you guys remember when Wayfair got accused of selling children? That was a huge thing back in the day. I still believe there was some truth to that. And the other thing I talked to them about was Jeffrey Epstein and how I didn't think that he killed himself. Okay, fast forward. It's 2025. Thomas Massie has talked about the Epstein files twice over the entire course of the Biden administration. He has brought it up twice. Why? Why? Why are you just, and this is when he starts really harping on it. It's like, okay, the entire course of Biden, you brought it up twice. Why are you now all of a sudden bringing it up again and again and again and again? And I believe it was because it was an opportunity for him to get at Trump. It was an opportunity for him to stand against Trump. And this was before Operation Epic Fury. This was before some of the more unpopular actions of the Trump administration. So why is Massie all of a sudden going after Trump? I don't know. This is just a theory. I have no confirmation for this. I have no basis in any evidence that I've seen for this. This is just a theory. But do you guys remember when Massie went on, I believe it was a big podcast. It might have been Joe Rogan, but Massie went on a few podcasts in 2024 in the lead up to the election, and on a few podcasts right after the election as well. And he talked about how the reason that he endorsed Trump late in the game in October, the reason that he endorsed Trump was because he got a promise that he would become Secretary of Agriculture. Trump was going to pick Thomas Massie as Secretary of Agriculture. That obviously did not happen. So it's easy for one to assume, and again, I don't necessarily have a basis for this, but it's easy for one to assume Massie was pretty mad about that and used that as an opportunity to build up resentment, and that resentment led him to the actions that we saw. But Massie has a 91 or 90 whatever percent voting record with Republicans and with conservatives. He's one of the most conservative members of the House. This has been true in the past. However, when you look at the data and the statistics, when it comes to this current Congress, the 119th Congress, Massie has a 77.7% voting record with Republicans. That is a huge drop off from 90%. And what has he voted against? He voted against the big beautiful bill because of spending or whatever. He voted against border security in the big beautiful bill. In fact, he used border security as one of his reasons for voting against it. He said in a tweet, and you can go look this up, he said in a tweet that one of the reasons that he was going to vote against the big beautiful bill is because he wanted realistic border spending. I'm sorry, did we not just see over the last 4 years the Biden administration usher in millions upon millions of illegal immigrants into the country and effectively gut ICE and beat Border Patrol? Did we not see that? Am I just imagining things? And you want realistic border security? And this isn't the only time that Massie has stood against ICE. Back in January, after the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, which I believe were justified, he said that he was going to join with Democrats on an amendment to effectively neuter ICE. He advocated for the idea of ICE being required to get a warrant in order to search people, a judicial warrant. Here's the thing, though. Here's the problem. They're not allowed to. ICE isn't allowed to get warrants. They can't get warrants through the court process because it's a different agency. It's different than traditional law enforcement. If they tried to go to a judge and get a warrant, they'd be laughed at. And yet Massie wanted to force them to get warrants, which would effectively make ICE useless because they couldn't be able to do anything. On immigration, other immigration matters, Massie is, of course, incredibly, incredibly bad. He has publicly stood against E-Verify. In fact, there are still tweets that are up from Massie talking about how he thinks E-Verify is bad. He's in favor of H-1Bs. He's in favor of legal immigration. He is the textbook definition of I'm okay with the demographic replacement of America as long as it's done legally. You know, the same comment that you get when you talk about other people, if you talk about Marco Rubio and how he's improved, people will comment that under your post. I know because it happened to me. That's Thomas Massie. That is literally Thomas Massie. And I get it. For some people, it's like this whole thing about, well, Massie stands against the establishment and he doesn't play ball with anybody. I get the appeal in that, but when you're looking at a united leftist front that wants to destroy this country and wants to literally kill us like they did to Charlie Kirk, sometimes you have to play ball on some of the big important issues. Speaking of which, remember when Charlie Kirk was murdered? Massie turned around and blamed President Trump for that happening. What is this guy doing? So ultimately, the reason Massie lost his reelection last night was not because of Israel. It was because the people of the Republican Party, the base constituency, still really likes Trump. And when they perceive that somebody is against Trump, especially if they're living in deep red Kentucky, they're not going to like that person very much and they're going to vote against them. That is why Massie lost. Now, we can talk about Ed Galrain. Was he the strongest candidate? No. Would he have been my preference for somebody to run against Massie? Probably not. But it's still an improvement in my opinion, because at least now we have a reliable vote on important agenda items. I would wish that we would have more people like that in the Senate, where the Save America Act is still sitting unpassed, but we could be getting some movement on that as well. And the reason why is because Trump made a very important endorsement yesterday. Now, a lot of people like to point at Trump endorsements as one of the weaker things, one of the weaker parts of his presidency, and he's made some bad endorsements over the years. People I've stood against. I was in favor of Nate Morris in Kentucky. Trump endorsed Andy Barr. I was in favor of Blake Masters when he ran for a congressional seat in Arizona. Trump endorsed Abe Hamadeh. There have been several endorsements that Trump has made that I have not been necessarily a fan of. But there was a very important endorsement yesterday that all of us have been hoping for and wishing for, and that was for Ken Paxton in his primary against current Texas Senator John Cornyn. Cornyn, of course, is weak. He's a rhino. And he had an opportunity to end this race. Right after this race went to a runoff, Paxton came out and said, if Cornyn votes for the Save America Act, I will drop out. And ultimately, I believe that's what got Trump's attention the most. That's what I believe what got Trump. That's what I believe got. I cannot speak English tonight. That's what I believe got Trump's attention, because all signs were pointing towards Trump endorsing Cornyn. There were reports coming out of the White House that Trump was going to endorse Cornyn. And ultimately, that didn't happen. Instead, we got the Paxton endorsement. Huge endorsement, and I think that John Cornyn is going to lose his Senate seat. And a lot of people are concerned about Paxton's statewide appeal. He's won Attorney General 3 times. He can win statewide. And the people of Texas are going to see somebody like James Talrico, who's going to be the Democrat opponent, and they're going to think that guy is insane. We're not going for that. Paxton will be the next U.S. Senator from Texas. It's going to happen. And it's partially thanks to Donald Trump. It's a little late in the game, but we're glad that Trump did this. Now, before we move on, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Deus Volt lapel pins. They have been a tremendous company to work with. They're a great guy. It's a great guy running that business. He makes amazing lapel pins. Go to deusvoltlapelpins.com and use my code ChristFamilyNation26 for 10% off your next order. He's got some really cool stuff coming out, including a new pin it's the Latin translation of the creed of the Reformation, out of darkness, light. It is a very important phrase, and he's got a lot of other great lapel pins. Go and visit his business. Go to deusvoltlapelpins.com. Use my code ChristFamilyNation26 for 10% off. You will not regret it. And I do want to say one thing about this company. They are great people. It's a great guy running it. And one thing I appreciate about him is he does not play this game of performative denouncements. When people accuse him of working with bad people, he does not play this game of performative denouncements where he goes out and says, "We are ashamed that we worked with this person because of X, Y, and Z." He's somebody that actually understands that you can be friends with somebody and support somebody and not agree with them on 100% of the issues. For perfect example, I had people tagging him in my comment section on X because of my anti-Massie post, demanding that he stop working with me because I don't like Massie. And he refused to take the bait. Shout out. I don't know what his thoughts and opinions on Massie are. They might be different than mine, and if so, that's okay. That's 100% fine. What's not okay is people who I thought that I agreed with stuff on, all of a sudden treating me like I'm an anathema because I don't like Thomas Massie. It's insane to see. It's really insane to see. But we're not going to harp on the past. This is the last that I'm going to be discussing this because the primary is over. It's time to turn towards victory in November. Now, we're going to move on to a different topic, one that will probably be equally as infuriating for some of you. Cuba. Viva la Cuba. We have got pretty strong confirmation that something is about to go down in Cuba. The United States Department of Justice has indicted former Cuban President Raul Menendez, the brother of... I just said Menendez. I've been avoiding making this mistake so many times when I've been talking about this. I played Black Ops 2 growing up. If you played, you know the reference I just made. We're starting over. The Justice Department has just indicted Raul Castro, the brother of longtime leader Fidel Castro in Cuba, on 30-year-old charges having to do with the downing of 2 American aircraft. Now, this is strongly suggesting that there's going to be some sort of intervention, probably similar to what happened in Venezuela, happening in Cuba pretty soon. And it's got a lot of people in a little bit of a tizzy. You know, Trump's been signaling this for a while. He's been saying Cuba's next for a while. And it's got some people in a little bit of a tizzy. Because a lot of people are very against foreign intervention in general, which I understand, and it's a respectable position to hold. It's a very respectable position to hold. I generally don't like foreign intervention either when it doesn't serve America's interest. The difference is I also wholeheartedly believe in an idea called the Monroe Doctrine. And we've talked about this before in the past. But the Monroe Doctrine is the idea that North and South America, the Western Hemisphere, are the domain of the United States. And foreign adversaries, foreign countries, should not be getting involved in our business over here. Now, this was historically as a wedge against Europe. It has since become a little bit more of a wedge against the Soviet Union / Russia during the Cold War, now moving more so towards China, because there's been a buildup of Chinese investment in South America. Look at the Panama Canal, for example. We need to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. And part of that means doing what we're about to do in Cuba. Personally, it's my opinion that we should have incorporated Cuba into a territory, into a colony, back during the James K. Polk administration. Polk's vision for America is exactly what I would love to see come to fruition. Now, a lot of people will say, but that would bring so many Hispanics and so many foreigners into the country. Not necessarily. There's some things we can do about that. Part of which maybe being making these places colonies instead of territories or states. A little colonialism never hurt anybody. But we need to take Cuba. We should have taken Cuba a long time ago. It is 90 miles off the coast of Miami. This isn't Iran that is thousands of miles on the other side of the world. This is something that is less than 100 miles off of our own coast. We need to take this very seriously. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis when the Soviet Union loaded Cuba up with missiles? Do we want China doing something similar? No. Intervention in Cuba is necessary. And from what I hear, there might already be CIA operatives on the ground in Cuba. Remember that mission in Black Ops 1? That's happening right now in real life. We are seeing much needed intervention in Cuba. South America, Latin America, North America, that is the United States domain. And if these countries do not fall in line with our vision, with our hegemony, we need to do something about it. Because if they don't ally with us, they will surely ally with our adversaries. And we cannot allow that in our own backyard. Not to mention the fact that thousands of Americans have died over the past few years from drugs funneled from South America into the United States. The cartels, especially in Mexico, pose a huge threat to the United States. We have to wipe out the cartels. We have to take Cuba. We have to wipe out the drug trafficking. We have to kick China out of South America. We have to rid this hemisphere of communists. And there are lots of communists in South America. This is something that is incredibly necessary and something I wholeheartedly support. A lot of people might think that the Monroe Doctrine is some outdated concept, that America doesn't really have hegemony over the Western Hemisphere anymore, that this is just some outdated relic of colonialism. Colonialism was a great thing. This is not an outdated relic. This is something we should be pursuing more. But what about these countries' sovereignty? They can keep their sovereignty. They can make their own decisions for their country. But they should also recognize that there is a sovereign nation more powerful than them in the United States. There's always been hierarchy in human history. This isn't anything new. There have always been superpowers and hegemonic nations that have called the shots within regions. Maybe you don't want the United States to be that. Okay, who takes our place? Because it's not going to be some perfect world where there's no superpower, there's no hegemony over the globe by one country. That's not going to happen. China is biting at the bit to become the dominant power in the world. Do we really want communist China calling the shots for the rest of the world? Or would we rather it be the United States? This, of course, does not mean that we have to get involved in every single little thing that happens across the globe. We can maintain an America First foreign policy, but it is 100% America First to keep a tight leash on Latin American countries. This is something that we should be pursuing, and I cannot wait to see Cuba under the influence of the American government. It'll be great to see. It'll be beautiful, wonderful. I was happy about what happened in Venezuela. I will be happy when we are successful in Cuba. And I cannot wait until we start dropping bombs on the drug cartels. We already are to a certain extent. We need to ramp it up. Let's get out of Iran. Let's leave Iran. We don't need to be doing anything in Iran. It's been long enough. Make them force them to give up their nuclear program. They shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, sure. Do all that, but let's get out of there as soon as possible and let's focus on what really matters. Our own hemisphere. All right, that's all we've got for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, do all the things. If you're watching on X, hit follow, hit repost, share this with your friends, tell your friends about the show. I love you guys very much, and I'm very glad that you guys tune in each week to support me. This is going to be my last week in this apartment. Starting next week, we will be in a new location. Once again, if you are a Nashville Patriot, I will be in your area for the remainder of the summer. So I can't wait to meet you guys in Nashville. I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you guys for watching. God loves you, and so do I. Have a very great weekend.